My name is Laura, and I am 68 years old. For 45 years, I thought I knew the man I married. We built a life together, raised children, survived every storm that came our way. But last month, Gerald told me he was leaving. He said he needed a fresh start with someone younger, someone who made him feel alive again. What he did not realize was that I had owned something all along, something he had completely forgotten about. Before I tell you what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching from. If you have ever trusted someone completely only to discover they had forgotten who really held the power, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe, because this story is about to take a turn Gerald never saw coming. Let me take you back to the beginning, back to when everything seemed perfect. I met Gerald Morrison in 1979 in Chicago, Illinois. I was 23 years old, working as an accountant for a small manufacturing firm downtown. Gerald was 25, a sales representative for an office supply company. We met at an industry conference at the Palmer House Hotel. He had this confidence about him, this energy that drew people in. We started talking during a coffee break, and by the end of the conference, he had asked for my phone number. Our courtship was quick but felt right. We dated for a year, spending weekends exploring the city, going to jazz clubs in the Loop, taking walks along Lake Michigan. Gerald talked about his dreams constantly. He wanted more than a sales job. He wanted to build something, to create his own business, to be his own boss. I loved his ambition. It matched something in me, something that wanted more than just punching a clock every day. We got married in 1980 at a small church on the north side. My parents were there, my grandmother, his family from downstate. It was simple, beautiful, exactly what we wanted. We rented a tiny apartment in Lincoln Park, and I kept working while Gerald continued in sales. We were happy, building towards something, saving what we could. Those first few years were not easy financially. We both worked long hours. I handled accounts during the day and came home to cook dinner in our cramped kitchen. Gerald worked late, always chasing the next sale, the next commission. But we were together, and that felt like enough. Then in 1985, everything changed. Gerald came home one evening in March with a business plan he had been working on for months. He wanted to start a marketing consulting firm. He had clients lined up, he said. He had the expertise. All he needed was capital. $50,000 to cover the first year of operations, office space, equipment, payroll. I asked him where we would get that kind of money. We had maybe $8,000 in savings. Gerald looked at me with those hopeful eyes and said he had been thinking about my inheritance. My grandmother had passed away 6 months earlier, leaving me exactly $50,000. It was all I had from her, all I would ever have. That money represented security, a down payment on a house someday, a cushion if anything went wrong. But Gerald was my husband. I trusted him completely. He promised we would make it work. He promised I would be a partner in every sense of the word. He said we would build this together, that my investment would mean I owned part of the company. I believed him. We met with a lawyer that April. Gerald had found someone who specialized in small business incorporation. The lawyer drew up the documents for Morrison Marketing Solutions. I sat there as he explained the ownership structure. Since I was providing 100% of the initial capital, I would own 51% of the company. Gerald, contributing his expertise and labor, would own 49%. It made sense legally. The lawyer said it protected my investment. I signed. Gerald signed. The documents were notarized and filed with the Illinois Secretary of State. I got a copy, put it in a folder, and placed it in our filing cabinet at home. Gerald took his copy to the new office. Morrison Marketing Solutions opened for business in May of 1985. The early years of the company were difficult. Gerald worked 12 14-hour days. He brought in clients slowly. I continued my accounting job to keep us afloat financially, and at night, I did the bookkeeping for the company. I processed invoices, tracked expenses, prepared basic financial statements. Gerald handled everything else: the sales, the strategy, the client relationships. By 1987, The company was stable enough that Gerald could pay himself a small salary. That same year, I got pregnant with our first child. Andrew was born in September, and I cut back on my accounting hours. 2 years later, when I was pregnant with Jessica, I quit my job entirely to focus on the children. As the kids grew, so did the company. The 1990s were good for Morrison Marketing Solutions. Businesses were expanding, and they needed help with branding, advertising, public relations. Gerald hired more staff, moved to a bigger office in the suburbs, took on bigger clients. By 2000, the company had 20 employees and annual revenue over $2 million. I became the wife of a successful businessman. I attended company parties, charity galas, client dinners. People introduced me as Gerald Morrison's wife. No one ever mentioned that I was the majority owner. To be honest, I had almost forgotten myself. The original paperwork sat in a file cabinet in our basement, untouched for decades. Gerald ran the company. It was his baby, his creation, his success. I was proud of him. I was content being his partner in life, supporting him, raising our children, being there for every milestone. Our life was comfortable. We bought a large house in Naperville when Jessica was 5. The kids went to good schools. We took family vacations to Florida every summer. Gerald provided well, and I never questioned the arrangement. I trusted him completely. After 20, then 30, then 40 years together, I believed we were solid, unshakable. By January of this year, our children were grown. Andrew was 38, married with 2 kids of his own. He worked as a civil engineer in Milwaukee. Jessica was 35, unmarried, working as a marketing director for a tech startup in Chicago. Gerald was 70 years old. I was 68. We were looking forward to retirement travel, quiet years together. I had no idea everything was about to collapse. It started with small things I did not want to notice. In late January, Gerald joined a gym. He had never been particularly athletic, but suddenly he was going every morning before work. He lost weight, bought new clothes, started using hair gel to cover the gray. He said he wanted to feel healthier, look better. I thought it was a midlife crisis, even though he was well past midlife. I tried to be supportive. Then there was his phone. Gerald had always been casual about it, leaving it on the kitchen counter, answering calls in front of me. But in February, he became protective. He took it everywhere, even to the bathroom. When it buzzed, he would glance at it quickly and smile in a way I had never seen before. A secretive, almost giddy smile. I asked him once if everything was okay. He said yes, just busy with work. A big new project, he explained. Lots of moving parts. I believed him because believing him was easier than suspecting. The late nights increased. 2-3 times a week, Gerald would not come home until 9 or 10 in the evening. He said he was meeting with clients, working with his team on proposals. When he came home, he smelled like expensive cologne I had not bought him. His shirts had creases in odd places, like they had been hastily buttoned. Our kids noticed too. When Andrew visited in early March, he pulled me aside. He said Dad seemed different, distracted. Jessica called me the next week and said the same thing. I brushed it off. I told them their father was just stressed, that running a company at 70 was not easy. But inside, I felt the first stirrings of real fear. In mid-February, Gerald hired a new assistant. Her name was Stephanie Walsh. She was 29 years old, fresh out of an MBA program, ambitious and polished. Gerald introduced her to me at the company Valentine's Day party. I shook her hand and noted how she smiled at my husband, how her eyes lingered on him a beat too long. Gerald seemed energized around her, laughing at her jokes, touching her elbow when they talked. I told myself I was being paranoid. Stephanie was young enough to be our granddaughter. Surely Gerald would not be so foolish. But the doubt gnawed at me. I started paying closer attention. Every time Gerald mentioned work, Stephanie's name came up. They were working late together. She had great ideas. She understood the new direction he wanted to take the company. One evening in early March, I could not take it anymore. Gerald was in the shower. His phone sat on the nightstand, buzzing repeatedly. I had never checked his phone in 45 years of marriage. I had never needed to. But something inside me broke. I picked it up. I knew the passcode. It was our wedding anniversary, 6 digits the month and year we got married. The messages were from someone saved as S. The most recent one said, "Cannot wait to see you tomorrow. I missed you already." My hands shook. I opened the thread. There were hundreds of messages going back months. I scrolled through them, my vision blurring with tears. Stephanie called me the old lady. Gerald replied with complaints about our marriage, about how I had become boring, predictable, comfortable. He wrote things like, "I should have left her years ago. You make me feel young again. I feel alive with you." They had plans. A trip together in April. Stephanie wrote about their future, about moving in together, about finally being able to stop sneaking around. Gerald responded with promises. He said he was going to end things with me soon, that he just needed the right time. I took screenshots, sent them to my own phone, and put his phone back. My heart pounded so hard I thought I might collapse. When Gerald came out of the shower, I was sitting on the bed staring at nothing. He asked if I was okay. I said I was fine, just tired. He kissed the top of my head and said he loved me. The words felt like acid. That night I lay beside him, listening to him breathe. The man I had spent 45 years with, the man I had given everything to, was a stranger. Every memory felt contaminated. Every moment of happiness now seemed like a lie. I did not sleep. I could not eat. For the next 2 weeks, I walked through my life like a ghost. Jessica called and immediately knew something was wrong. I told her I was just tired, not feeling well. She wanted to come over. I told her not to worry. But I was drowning, and I did not know how to save myself. By the end of March, I knew I could not keep living this way. I needed to confront Gerald. I needed to hear the truth from his mouth, even though I already knew what it would be. I waited for a Friday evening when he came home at a reasonable hour, not reeking of cologne, not distracted by his phone. I made his favorite dinner, pot roast with potatoes and carrots. He ate, complimented the food, talked about his day like everything was normal. When he finished, I cleared the dishes, sat back down and said, "We need to talk." Gerald looked up, his fork halfway to his mouth. About what? I pulled out my phone. I did not say anything. I just showed him the screenshots. The color drained from his face. He put the fork down slowly. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he sighed a deep, resigned sigh and looked away. "I did not want you to find out this way," he said quietly. "So it is true." I managed to ask, even though my voice was shaking. "You and Stephanie," he nodded. "Yes." The single word shattered whatever hope I had been clinging to. "How long?" 6 months, he said. "Maybe longer. I do not know exactly when it started." Why, I asked, and I hated how weak I sounded. "Why would you do this?" Gerald stood up. He paced to the window, looked out at the darkening sky. When he spoke, his voice was calm, measured, like he was explaining a business decision. "Laura, we have been together for 45 years. I am tired. You have become comfortable, predictable. We do not do anything anymore. We just exist." I stared at him. "We raised a family. We built a life." He turned to face me. "Stephanie makes me feel alive again. She is young, ambitious, exciting. She sees me differently. Not as some old man coasting to retirement, but as someone who still has potential, who still has fire." "What about our marriage?" I asked. "What about our family? What about everything we built together?" Gerald shook his head. "We have had a good run, Laura, but it is over. I need a fresh start. I deserve to be happy." The words were like knives. "You deserve to be happy. What about me?" "You will be fine," he said almost dismissively. "The house is paid off. You will get alimony. I have already talked to a lawyer. You will be taken care of financially." "I do not want your money," I said, standing now, anger rising through the pain. "I want to understand how you could throw away 45 years for some girl young enough to be your granddaughter. Because I can," Gerald said, and there was an edge to his voice now. "Because I finally realized life is short, and I do not want to spend what is left of it with someone who is past her prime. The cruelty of those words took my breath away. Past my prime. As if I were a product on a shelf, expired and worthless. I am leaving, Gerald said, heading toward the stairs. I am moving out. Stephanie and I are getting an apartment together. I will send someone for my things next week. I stood there frozen as he went upstairs. I heard drawers opening, the closet door sliding. 20 minutes later, he came down with the suitcase, walked past me without a word, and left. The front door closed. His car started. He drove away. I stood in the kitchen alone in the house we had shared for decades, and I broke. I cried until I could not breathe, until my chest hurt, until I had nothing left. 45 years gone in one evening. 45 years discarded like I meant nothing. The next morning, Jessica called. I could not hide it anymore. I told her everything. She screamed into the phone, cursing her father, crying with me. Within an hour, she was at my house. Andrew called shortly after, just as angry, just as devastated. Both of my children rallied around me, but their love could not fill the void Gerald had left. For a week, I barely functioned. I did not eat. I did not sleep. I wandered through the house, seeing memories everywhere. The kitchen table where we had eaten thousands of meals. The living room where we watched our kids grow up. The bedroom where we had slept side by side for decades. Everything reminded me of what I had lost. Then 8 days after Gerald left, I received a thick envelope in the mail. It was from his lawyer. Inside were divorce papers. He was filing for dissolution of marriage, citing irreconcilable differences. Attached was a proposed settlement. I would keep the house. Gerald would pay me $3,000 a month in alimony. He would keep the company and all business assets. I read the papers 3 times. The company, Morrison Marketing Solutions. The company he claimed as his own. The company everyone believed he had built from nothing. And that was when I remembered. I went upstairs to our bedroom. No, my bedroom now. Gerald had taken his clothes, his personal items, but the furniture remained. I opened the closet, pulled out the step stool, and reached for the top shelf. There, behind old photo albums and boxes of holiday decorations, was the metal filing box I had not opened in decades. I carried it downstairs, set it on the kitchen table, and lifted the lid. Inside were documents from our early years together. Tax returns, mortgage papers, and there in a manila folder near the bottom, the incorporation documents for Morrison Marketing Solutions. My hands trembled as I pulled them out. The papers were yellowed with age, the corners bent, but the words were clear. Morrison Marketing Solutions Incorporated, May 1985. Founders, Laura Morrison and Gerald Morrison. Ownership structure, Laura Morrison, primary investor, 51%. Gerald Morrison, 49%. I stared at the document, 51%. I owned the majority of the company. I always had. For 40 years, I had owned controlling interest in Morrison Marketing Solutions, and I had completely forgotten. Or rather, Gerald had made me forget. By running the company, making every decision, calling it his creation, he had erased my role. He had rewritten history so thoroughly that even I believed the lie. But the papers did not lie. Legal documents do not forget. I owned 51% of a company now worth millions. I grabbed my phone and called Mr. Harrison, the family lawyer who had handled our wills and estate planning. I told him I needed to see him immediately. He heard the urgency in my voice and made time that afternoon. In his office downtown, I spread the documents across his desk. Mr. Harrison, a dignified man in his 60s with silver hair and reading glasses, picked them up carefully. He read for several minutes, his eyebrows rising slightly. "Mrs. Morrison," he said finally, "this is a legally binding contract. You own 51% of Morrison Marketing Solutions. Is it still valid?" I asked. "After 40 years," he looked at me seriously, "unless there is a written amendment signed by both parties changing the ownership structure, yes. This is ironclad. Did you ever sign anything transferring your shares to Gerald? Never, I said. We never discussed it again after the company was founded. Mr. Harrison leaned back in his chair. Then you have owned 51% this entire time. As the majority shareholder, you have controlling interest. You have the power to make all major decisions for the company, including removing executives. I felt dizzy. Can I really do that? Absolutely, he said. Gerald likely forgot about this arrangement or assumed that marital property laws would give him control. But in Illinois, business ownership established through separate property, like your inheritance, remains separate unless explicitly transferred. You never transferred it. The state records will confirm this. What do? I asked. Mr. Harrison smiled slightly. First, we verify this with the Illinois Secretary of State. Then we notify Gerald of your ownership status and your intentions. What are your intentions, Mrs. Morrison? I thought about Gerald, about Stephanie, about 45 years of loyalty repaid with humiliation. I thought about being called past my prime. I thought about being discarded like trash. I want my company back, I said. Mr. Harrison nodded. Then let us make that happen. He spent the next week gathering documentation. He requested official records from the Illinois Secretary of State's office. When they arrived, they confirmed everything. Laura Morrison, 51% owner, no amendments on file, no transfers recorded. Mr. Harrison prepared a formal notification letter to Gerald, informing him that I was exercising my rights as majority shareholder. He also called for an emergency board meeting at Morrison Marketing Solutions. Gerald, as a minority shareholder, could not refuse. The meeting was scheduled for a Wednesday afternoon in mid-April. Mr. Harrison said I did not have to attend, that he could represent me. But I wanted to be there. I needed to see Gerald's face when he realized what he had forgotten. The morning of the meeting, I woke up early. I had not slept well in weeks, but that morning I felt something different. Not quite confidence, but determination. I put on my best suit, a navy blue outfit I had bought for Jessica's college graduation years ago. I did my hair, applied makeup carefully. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who had been knocked down but was not staying down. Mr. Harrison picked me up at noon. We drove to the Morrison Marketing Solutions office in silence. I had not been there in months. The building was modern glass and steel, with the company logo displayed prominently at the entrance. Gerald's name was on the door, Gerald Morrison, Chief Executive Officer. Not for long, I thought. We took the elevator to the 4th floor, where the conference room was located. Mr. Harrison had arranged for the meeting to include Gerald, 3 senior executives. I vaguely recognized the company's corporate lawyer, and Stephanie, who apparently had the title of executive assistant to the CEO. When we walked in, everyone was already seated. Gerald looked up and shock registered on his face. Laura, what are you doing here? I am here in my capacity as majority shareholder, I said calmly, taking a seat at the head of the table. Majority shareholder, Gerald laughed, but it sounded nervous. What are you talking about? Mr. Harrison opened his briefcase and pulled out copies of the incorporation documents. He passed them around the table. As you can see, Mrs. Morrison invested the entire initial capital of $50,000 in 1985 in exchange for 51% ownership. Mr. Morrison received 49% for his operational contribution. The corporate lawyer, a woman named Ms. Foster, picked up the document and read carefully. Gerald grabbed his copy, his face going pale as he scanned the pages. This is ridiculous, Gerald sputtered. This was 40 years ago. Things have changed. Unless you have documentation showing a transfer of ownership or an amendment to this agreement, Mr. Harrison said smoothly, nothing has changed legally. I have confirmation from the Illinois Secretary of State's office. Mrs. Morrison owns 51%. Miss Foster looked up. If this is valid, and it appears to be Mrs. Morrison does have majority control. One of the executives, a man named Mr. Patterson, spoke up. I was not aware of this ownership structure. Most people were not, Mr. Harrison said. But lack of awareness does not change legal reality. Stephanie leaned forward, her face flushed. This is absurd. Gerald built this company from nothing. I turned to look at her for the first time. I kept my voice calm, cold. From nothing, he built it from my $50,000, my inheritance, my trust, and apparently my stupidity for not reminding him of that fact sooner. Gerald stood up. Laura, please. Let us talk about this privately. We are past private conversations, Gerald, I said. You wanted a fresh start. You are getting one. I looked around the table. As majority shareholder, I am exercising my right to make executive decisions. Effective immediately, I am removing Gerald Morrison from his position as Chief Executive Officer. The room fell silent. Gerald stared at me, his mouth open. You cannot do this, he said finally. Miss Foster cleared her throat. Actually, with 51% ownership, she can. I also am terminating the employment of Ms. Stephanie Walsh for unprofessional conduct and conflict of interest. Stephanie jumped to her feet. You cannot fire me. Gerald hired me. Gerald no longer has the authority, I said. Security will escort you both out. Mr. Harrison had already arranged for building security to be on standby. 2 guards appeared at the door. Gerald looked at them, then at me, his face a mixture of rage and disbelief. This company is my life's work, he said, his voice breaking. Built on my investment, I replied. You are welcome to retain your 49% as a silent partner, but operational control is mine now. Stephanie grabbed her purse, glaring at me. You are going to regret this. I am done with regrets, I said. The guards escorted them out. I watched through the glass walls as they walked through the office past employees who stared in confusion toward the elevators. Gerald looked back once, his face devastated. I felt no satisfaction, no triumph, only a cold, hard certainty that I had done what needed to be done. After they left, I turned to the remaining executives. I appointed Mr. Patterson as interim CEO and told them I would be learning the business operations over the coming weeks. The meeting adjourned. People filed out quietly, unsure what to make of what had just happened. Mr. Harrison and I left last. In the elevator, he said, That took courage. It took survival, I corrected. News traveled fast. By that evening, Jessica and Andrew both called, having heard from various sources what had happened. Jessica was ecstatic. Mom, I cannot believe you did that. I am so proud of you. Andrew was more measured, but equally supportive. You did the right thing, Mom. Dad does not deserve that company after what he did to you. Over the next few days, I learned just how much the company was worth. Mr. Patterson, a good man who had been with Morrison Marketing Solutions for 15 years, gave me a full briefing. Current valuation, approximately $15 million. Annual revenue, $18 million. Profit margin, healthy. The company Gerald had wanted to keep for himself to share with Stephanie to build his new life around was substantially mine. Gerald hired a lawyer immediately. He tried to negotiate to fight back. His lawyer sent letters claiming the original ownership agreement was outdated, irrelevant, that Gerald's decades of work had earned him full control. Harrison demolished every argument. Ownership is ownership, he said. Time does not diminish it. Work does not transfer it. Only signed legal documents can change it. Gerald tried to buy me out. His lawyer offered $2 million for my 51%. Mr. Harrison laughed. The company is worth $15 million. Her 51% is worth over $7 million at minimum. Gerald did not have that kind of money. Most of his wealth was tied up in his 49% of the company. He tried other tactics. He offered to give me everything else, the house, his retirement accounts, a lifetime of alimony, if I would just let him have the company. I refused every offer. The company was built on my money, my trust, my belief in him. I was not giving it away. The divorce proceedings dragged on for 3 months. In the end, the settlement was simple. I kept 51% of Morrison Marketing Solutions. Gerald kept his 49%, but had no operational authority. I kept the house. We split other marital assets evenly. No alimony for either party. The marriage was dissolved. During those 3 months, something interesting happened. Stephanie left Gerald. I heard about it through Jessica, who heard it from someone who still worked at the company. Once Gerald lost his position, his power, his CEO title, Stephanie lost interest. She had not fallen for a 70-year-old man. She had fallen for a rich, powerful CEO. Without that, Gerald was just an old man with diminished prospects. He called me once during that time. I almost did not answer, but curiosity won. He was crying. "Laura, Stephanie left me. I have nothing. Please, can we talk?" I hung up without responding. He had made his choices. Now he had to live with them. A year has passed since that awful March evening when Gerald told me I was past my prime. A year since he walked out to start his fresh life with Stephanie. A year since I discovered the truth about what I had always owned. Morrison Marketing Solutions is thriving. I hired a professional CEO, a woman named Catherine, who has an MBA from Northwestern and 20 years of experience. I serve as board chair involved in strategic decisions, but not day-to-day operations. I attend meetings, review financial reports, and guide the company's direction. It turns out I am good at this. Decades of managing a household, raising children, and handling complex family logistics translated well into business oversight. The company has grown. We landed 3 major new clients this year. Revenue is up 20%. Employees seem happier with the new leadership structure. Several people told me quietly that Gerald had become difficult in his later years, mercurial and distracted. The company is better off now. I joined a business networking group for women entrepreneurs and executives. I met others who had similar stories, women who had been overlooked, underestimated, erased from their own narratives. We support each other, share advice, celebrate victories. I also joined a book club and started taking art classes. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected during my marriage. I traveled to Italy with a group of women from my church. I am learning who Laura is, separate from being Gerald's wife. It turns out I am interesting. I am capable. I am stronger than I ever gave myself credit for. Jessica comes over every Sunday for dinner. Andrew visits monthly with his family. My grandchildren ages 6 and 8 call me Grandma Laura and think I am the coolest grandmother because I run a company. They do not need to know the messy details yet. Someday I will tell them the whole story, but for now they just know Grandma is a boss. I have not spoken to Gerald since the divorce was finalized. I hear updates occasionally. He lives in a small apartment in the city. He found consulting work using his 49% stake in Morrison Marketing Solutions as proof of his credentials. He looks older now, according to Jessica, who ran into him at a coffee shop. Tired, diminished. Stephanie, last I heard, is engaged to a hedge fund manager closer to her own age. Do I feel vindicated? Sometimes. Do I feel sad? Often. 45 years of my life were spent with a man who ultimately saw me as disposable. That pain does not disappear just because I won the business battle. I mourn the marriage I thought I had, even as I am grateful for the life I have now. But I also feel something else. I feel free. For decades, I let Gerald define my worth. I let him take credit for what we built together. I erased myself, made myself smaller, believed that my role was to support, never to lead. When he discarded me, I discovered I had been powerful all along. I just had not known it. The original investment of $50,000, my grandmother's legacy, has grown into millions. She would be proud, I think. She was a fierce woman who raised 6 children on a waitress salary after her husband died young. She taught me resilience even though I forgot the lesson for a while. Now, at 68, I am starting over. Not the way Gerald wanted, a fresh start, chasing youth and excitement. My fresh start is quieter, deeper. It is about reclaiming myself, remembering my value, refusing to accept someone else's diminished view of who I am. People ask me sometimes if I am angry. I tell them anger was useful for a while, but I do not want to carry it forever. Gerald made his choices. He lost a loyal wife, the respect of his children, and the company he thought was his. He chased an illusion and ended up with nothing. I do not need to punish him further. Life has done that already. What I learned is this: never forget your own power. Never let someone else write your story so completely that you forget the truth. I owned 51% of that company for 40 years and did not know it, or had forgotten, or had been conditioned to believe it did not matter. It mattered. It always mattered. I also learned that betrayal, as much as it destroys, can also rebuild. In the rubble of my marriage, I found pieces of myself I had lost. I found strength I did not know I possessed. I found a future I never imagined. Gerald wanted a fresh start with someone younger. He said he needed to feel alive again. Instead, he ended up alone, powerless, clinging to the remnants of a life he destroyed. I got my own fresh start built on the foundation I laid 40 years ago, when I believed in us, when I invested everything I had in our future. It turns out I did not need him to be strong. I just needed to remember I already was. So what do you think? Have you ever discovered you had power you did not know about? Have you ever been underestimated by someone who should have known better? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of your own strength or inspired you to stand up for yourself, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories like this, and share this with someone who needs to remember their own power today. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that it is never too late to reclaim what is yours. Wishing you strength, courage, and the wisdom to know your worth.